Hello everyone, thanks for stopping in and watching the video. Just letting you know I looked at a bunch of the builds, couldn't find anything that seemed to be like a covered everything Sorcerer build. Like, maybe it's really good at AoE, but not so much the boss. So I ended up just looking at a bunch of different builds, picking and choosing different legendary affixes and different paragons from a bunch of other builds and combining them into one to try to get best across the board. And this is what I came up with. This is a level 70 Nightmare Dungeon, and I'm level 80. I went ahead and cleared this whole dungeon. I'll show you kind of how I play it, since a lot of builds they just kind of say, "Hey, this is the stuff you use, and go figure it out." So I find it's pretty high level of play compared to other classes. Like, I was playing Necromancer, and it's pretty much just go around and right click and you win. So there's a lot more going on with this build. So I'll try to go over all the skills and just everything I'm using at the end of the video, but for now, just kind of show you the play style and what I'm doing to stay alive. I also have some T100 I tried doing at level 80 just to show you how much damage this really does. So first off, here's the T70. I'm pretty sure this has got to be one of the best builds out there now. I mean, a little biased because it's my build, but you'll see. And excuse the lag, and the game was freezing up, but I'm sure y'all have had rubber banding issues too. As you can see, it's pretty easy in T70. One thing about Sorcerer's Lair is the poison, so you can see my health just plummeting. I really don't have much of it. So what I'm kind of doing, if you'll notice, to stay alive is I'll pop my flame shield, and it seems like it just negates it. And then even like the ice armor, it gives you a barrier, and that also seems to negate it. And then sometimes, I want to say coming up here very shortly, I pop the deep freeze for the exact same reason. Right after I kill all these mobs, the poison hits me really hard. So yes, right there my life's just plummeting. I'm almost dead, and I notice it, so deep freeze, and now it's not plummeting anymore. So it's basically just another skill to keep you alive. As far as the general playstyle though, first of all, trying to get one shot, that's step one with any sorcerer build. I try to use my ice armor when I'm going into piles. Every now and then I'll forget to do it before I teleport. But ideally, do your ice armor, teleport into the pile, which that'll group everything up, and then Frost Nova, obviously to freeze them. And then with the Shared Misery, I'm using it'll spread to other mobs, and you kind of see it just continually spread on to more enemies. One thing I do here and there, not always, but I'll kind of try it here and there just to round up more enemies. I'll actually like flame shield, then run into a pile of enemies to kind of round them all up, and then I'll teleport in the middle of them to clump them all in one big AoE explosion. Because like if you just teleport in like this right here, you're only hitting the initial group, which it doesn't always mess you up, because like especially in the Sorcerer's Lair where the spiders just swarm you anyway, it's not that big a deal. And like right here you can see the poison's just eating away again, but flame shield and you're fine. So that's general playstyle. Not really that complicated, but it's a lot of just smashing buttons at the right time. As far as the boss, let me fast forward. Right. So for the boss, you want to swap Frostbolt into the Ice Shard passive spot. So starting off, I'm just kind of teleporting into the boss, trying to stay alive too, because I'm low health and a high level dungeon, obviously. But I'm just trying to build up a stagger right now. That's all I'm really trying to do. So Frost Nova, teleport, deep freeze. That hit the boss, that it adds to the stagger bar. And because you have Frostbolt instead of the Ice Shard passive, your Ice Shards also add to stagger. So it's not going to be the fastest kill, but level 80 killing a 124 boss, it's not too bad. Once you stagger them, they're just going to drop dead, basically. So that's a 70. Alright, so as you can see, I'm level 80. This is like the first T100 I opened just to try it out and see how strong this build really was. As you can see right there, it's pretty strong for only level 80. And I was being kind of cautious, being kind of slow, trying to just see how bad it would really be. But as long as I freeze everything, everything dies. Just flame shield a little bit to dodge these javelins. I was like, man, this is going great. Realized I was like, hey, dang, I didn't even have my ice shards on there for my passive. I never changed it from the previous dungeon. So even without ice shard passive, it's that strong. And to be totally honest, this is just me playing around with the first one I got. It ended up being all ranged enemies, and honestly really hard to stay alive. You time the flame shell is perfect. If an arrow catches you off the string, you're pretty much done for. Because I don't have enough health, and my Paragon's so low and all that. But it's definitely doable if you play perfect and get like a melee map. But point being, this is just to show how strong it really is. Alright, first gonna go through the skills I'm using. They're probably pretty similar to most of the other builds out there, but they're slightly different than some of them. So first of all, you got Firebolt and Frostbolt. Some of the builds I see you just have 2 points into Firebolt. The reason you don't want to do that and you want to take Frostbolt is that on bosses, basically you swap the Ice Shard passive out for the Frostbolt passive, and you can actually stagger bosses a little quicker, and that gives you more damage when you're actually staggering them, almost like you're freezing them. Just always have a bad habit of forgetting to swap it back to ice shards after I kill the boss. Then I'll be halfway through the next dungeon and just wondering why things aren't dying as fast. Then I'll remember like, oh crap, So just try to remember to swap it back. Going down, max out ice shards, then destructive ice shards. That's pretty standard. Point to devastation. The max mana helps a little, but it's mainly just to get to here. A lot of builds I've seen have 3 there. I only put 2 because it's really only another 3% damage, so it's really not that amazing, I personally think. I put that extra point over here into Elemental Attunement. It just gives me a little bit of extra cooldown and reset skills, which that makes you stay alive more than anything else, and it ups your damage by being able to put out more Frost Novas and things of that nature. Dodge 1 point into Flame Shield and Shimmering Flame Shield, 1 point into Teleport, Shimmering Teleport. I've got 2 points in the Glass Cannon. You get 1 from the Arraignment. 1 point in Ice Armor. 1 point in the Enhanced Ice Armor just for the mana regeneration. Max out Frost Nova. Mystical Frost Nova. Okay, so now we've got 1 point in Align the Elements. 3 points in the Mana Shield. 3 points in Protection. These are just to help you stay alive. I've got 1 point into Precision Magic, but I'm not, 100% sold I really need it. I've been using it and it seems to work pretty well. Like, the main thing is I'm using the Lucky Hit to restore primary resource. And it seemed a little, like to proc a little bit less without it, but I really don't know that's really all that important. You could probably take it out and, maybe have another point in Glass Cannon, or if you really wanted to, you could put it back into the Elemental Dominance if you really wanted to. But personally, I'm just leaving it alone. 1 point Inner Flames, 3 points Devouring Blaze. Max out all 4 of these, which, again, that's pretty standard along with Deep Freeze. You probably could use Inferno or one of these other ones if you really wanted to, but I've just been sticking with Deep Freeze. It kind of gives me an extra, like, oh crap button to stay alive. Using Avalanche, which that's pretty standard for most builds I've seen also, since, Shatter's kind of obsolete now with the Barber. As far as Paragon, this is where I'm at as of now. I've got the build linked in the description below. To be fair, I kind of copied this from a previous meta build per se that got updated, and I can't find it again, so I guess they changed it or it got taken down. I have no idea. I was going to credit the original person that posted it, but I didn't see a name. Anyway, this is what I have at level 80. So you can see I've only got 3 glyphs in it. So I gotta assume, the the path he picked before is only gonna amplify it even more, maybe give me a little more survivability, but I hadn't actually tested it to see, so you might be able to find a better variation of Paragon points to give you a little bit more survivability. As far as more damage, I mean, I already have the damage at level 80 to do T100 damage, so I mean, it's kind of just more about staying alive at this point. As far as the gear itself, I've got the Frost Blitz. That to me is pretty much mandatory for the extra Novas. As far as the different rolls I got on it, the life on kill, I mean, you could swap that out if you wanted to. Personally, I like it because I'm constantly killing things and constantly getting more life. So personally, I plan on leaving it on there, but you could probably do like total armor, something along those lines, or maybe max life if you really wanted to. Cooldown, mandatory, lucky hit while you have a barrier, I'd keep that on there. And then the max mana, personally, I would say that's probably mandatory also. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is that, I'm just kind of skipping ahead here, but the Elementalist affix, so if you read it, it's core mastery skills cast at or above 100 mana, gain up to a 60% critical strike chance. So, looking at my mana right now, I only have 119. Whereas the cast of Ice Shards is 21 mana for me right now, even with all my resource cost reduction. So realistically, I get one shot, typically 2 shots, where I'll get that extra critical strike chance, and then it's gonna just basically plummet from there. I gotta let it either have a lucky hit proc to max me back out again, and then I'll do it again for the extra critical strike chance. But anytime it starts plummeting down on total mana, you're not doing that extra critical strike damage. And on that note, which again, kind of skipping ahead, I'm using the accelerating aspect, so I'm shooting faster and pumping out more damage. The only trade-off is eating through the mana a little quicker, so I mean, sometimes you kind of just get bad RNG and the lucky hit doesn't proc like it needs to, but 95% of the time I'd say it works perfectly fine. Worst case, you just kite the boss for a second and then you have full mana again. So anyway, Raiment of the Infinite, you're going to need that. Try to get the longest, close to the 3 seconds that you can for the stun duration. Most of the other stuff's just kind of going to be what you get, and high rolls the better. Gloves, I don't have the rolls I really want. I mean, on Ice Shards, obviously, 4 ranks. You want the primary resource, but you can see I've only got 11.3 out of 21%. The intelligence, I would rather that be critical strike chance. Lucky hit, I got lucky with that and got a perfect roll, so you definitely want the lucky hit. I've got the conceited aspect to deal extra damage while you have a barrier, so a lot of builds I saw, they weren't using that for some reason. I'm really not sure why. I did see a few that were using it, and my main issue was boss damage. Like every build I was using, I wasn't doing anything to the bosses. So at least this, you don't have to freeze them to do this extra damage. And then there's another one that was also specifically put in here for that reason, but we're not at it yet. Disobedience on the legs, that's standard on almost every build. I don't even have a perfect roll on there yet. For that, I would probably do, I don't have the ideal rolls, but they're okay enough. Damage reduction from close, I do damage reduction from distant. Probably total armor. And I like having the max life because it gives you more barrier also. Shared misery. To be honest with you, I've kind of slept on this aspect for a very long time and never really tried it. I just didn't think it was all that great, having never tried it. But in reality, it's amazing. Like, you frost nova a group of enemies, and once you start shooting, it just spreads across everything on the map. So, like, especially like on the, I can't ever say the word, I forget what it's called, it's like the Dohamine tunnel, whatever it's called, the new one that has the really high mob density. You can pretty much frost nova, start shooting them, and then like just keep walking while you shoot, and that one frost nova you can spread it across, like a quarter of the whole area by just continually walking and pushing as you go. So it's pretty cool, especially like in a group with another sorcerer. Weapon, we have control. So like that's one of the ones that a lot of the builds use, and I'm still using it because it's good in general. But for bosses, it really didn't seem to do anything extra. I mean, unless I'm missing something here, but you can't really immobilize, stun, or freeze a boss. As far as the rolls for the weapon, highest damage you can get, obviously, I would do a wand for the lucky hit chance, and then crit, core, vulnerable, and then probably intelligence would be better than all stats, but whatever you get, either one. For the neck, as I said, the Elementalist legendary affix, just for the extra critical strike chance. Granted, there's the caveat of having to be over 100 mana, so you got to deal with that. As far as different rolls, you want 3 Devouring Blaze, mana cost reduction, cooldown reduction, and then I'd probably go for like the +2 all defensive, just so you have an extra cooldown on all your like teleport, frost nova, those skills. I mean, pretty much everything you're using is defensive for the most part. You got 4 defensive skills. As far as the rings, definitely resource generation on both of them, and then crit, vulnerable crit. That's a pretty okay ring. So I got damage over time, doing like absolutely nothing for me on this ring, but it's the best I've gotten. As far as the legendary affixes, here's the accelerating I was talking about. And so basically it's just, my mentality on that was on bosses. Once you stagger them, during that stagger phase, you can just hit them that much more often and amp your damage real quick. And then also for like the barber, so you're bursting a lot quicker a lot of times because your first hit's a critical strike. So you're pretty much always going to proc that right off the bat. Then I've got Storm Swell. So this one is good for bosses also, and just everything you're hitting in general. So pretty much like a flat 30%, bonus. Because your boss is always going to be vulnerable. Every enemy is going to be vulnerable from either Frost Nova or just shooting it with ice shards. I'm trying to think, I might have seen like one build use that, but not very many. As far as the hearts, we've got the Barber. As far as the time duration, I mean, really just whatever works. You kill things so fast they pop anyway. Probably the lower the better though. The Taurasha, which I did read in the patch notes today that they fixed it. Apparently it was only doing additive damage this whole time, but now it's multiplicative. So, even more damage as of this new patch. And should I forget? How did I forget what this one's called? The suppression one. I think it's Revenge is what it's called. Obviously you want the higher percent damage suppressing that you can get. Offhand, I've got my Piercing Cold on there, which that's pretty standard for any ice shard build. As far as the rolls on here, I'm pretty happy with what I have on it. The only thing I would change maybe is the lucky hit chance while you have a barrier. I might swap that for just the resource regeneration. But honestly, kind of the reason I kept the lucky hit chance with the barrier on there is because most of the other builds were using a legendary affix that gave you the extra lucky hit chance while you have a barrier. So I was kind of just compensating for not having that. And I mean, the build works as it is, so didn't see a reason to change it, but feel free to try that. That's pretty much it. So I have a build link in the description. If anybody's got any input or different Paragon stuff they think we should try, I'm all about updating it and trying out new things. So if you like it, leave a like, and if you want to subscribe, great. Thanks.